Okay, so we've talked about our intentional torts against persons. We're now going to talk about intentional torts against property, and we have 4 of those. So our first one is a trespass to real property. And let's talk for a minute about what real property is. Real property is anything that is actually land or is attached to land in some sort of permanent form. So your home is real property, a shed on your home is real property, probably even a mobile home that is sort of permanently affixed is going to be real property. So real property is anything that it's more in that permanent form and affixed to land somehow. So trespass to real property is when someone enters the property, and it's got to be private property. It also can occur if somebody puts an object on the land. So if you throw your backpack over the fence onto the land, that would be trespass to real property. The other time that trespass can occur, you could be on someone's property and they could ask you to leave. And if you don't leave at that point, that would be trespass to real property. So if you ask someone to leave your home and they don't leave it, they are now a trespasser. And you could sue them for the tort of trespass. If you have committed trespass to real property, you are liable for damages just for the sake of trespassing, plus any damages that you have caused to the property. If you have done any kind of damage to the property, that is on top of what you might be liable for just as damages for trespassing. Now, one thing that we should realize is that although an owner doesn't have a duty to a trespasser, so if the owner of a home or some property doesn't have a duty to a trespasser to take care of them or anything like that, they also can't put them in significant danger. They might have a problem. Let's say an owner of some property put bear traps on their property because they don't like kids crossing their land on their way to school. That's going to be a problem because they have created a great danger to people who are trespassing on their property. They're not just trying to protect their property. So you do need to be reasonable in the way that you deal with people who are on your property. Our second trespass against property is nuisance. And nuisance is any time you use your property in a way that interferes with your neighbor's use and enjoyment of their property. So it's usually going to come in the form of possibly like a trash situation where you have a lot of trash or something, could be creating a really bad odor, as well as being unsightly. Noise is where this often comes up, where people are using their property in such a noisy way that they've created a nuisance for other people. And then smoke can also be one that could be a nuisance. People have big fires on their land creating a lot of smoke that can be smelled by all their neighbors. That could fall in the category of nuisance. Also flooding. If you do something that causes your neighbor's property to flood, that might be a nuisance. All right. Our next trespass against property is what we call conversion. Conversion involves personal property. And personal property is anything that's not real property. The easy way to think of it is as something that you can move. So anything that you can move around, pick up, and take to another place is probably going to be personal property. So, everything from your bike, your car, your backpack, your laptop, this is all personal property. Now, if you're looking at this picture, what you're thinking is this guy is stealing her purse. And that is what we call it in the criminal code. We call it stealing or theft. but in the civil code, we call it conversion. So you can think of conversion as stealing or theft. It's just anytime somebody permanently takes your property, they intend to take it and they intend to keep it. So this isn't just a loan or anything like that. That's conversion. We then also have trespass to personal property. And trespass to personal property is where they interfere with your ability to use your personal property. They don't intend to take your property and keep it. It's not something that they're trying to permanently remove it from you. They are just temporarily exerting some sort of control over your property, and therefore you can't use the property for a period of time. That would be trespass to personal property. The example I like to give, if you've ever been skiing, you will know that when people have lunch at the ski lodge, everybody leaves their skis out. And they aren't locked or anything like that, but they're just sitting out in front of the lodge. And it's conceivable that somebody could accidentally pick up the wrong pair of skis and go off with them. Well, if they did that, they would be committing a trespass to personal property. They didn't intend to steal those skis, and perhaps they're going to give them back to you even in an hour or later in the day when they figure out these are not my skis. They're going to return them, but they have temporarily deprived you of the ability to use those skis, and so that would be a trespass to personal property. All right, so these are our 4 intentional torts against property. We've got the trespass to realty or real property. That's the same thing. Nuisance, trespass to personal property, and then conversion. All right, so now let's move on to our torts against economic interest. And our first one is disparagement. Disparagement is something you can think of as defamation against companies. So it's a false statement of a material fact, and the result of that has been that your business has lost sales. So there's been some sort of lost sales involved. That is what we call disparagement. So the example that I'm showing you, I'm sure this lovely picture is making you hungry, but ABC News did a big special on ground beef and how it had something in it called pink slime, and they made a very big deal about it. The beef company was very upset about it because they felt that it was not true, and they sued ABC for defamation because they said that ABC caused people to believe that beef was not actually beef, when in fact this pink slime was just a byproduct of making beef. The company actually had to shut down 3 plants. This is one of the plants that they had to shut down, and they had to lay off 700 workers. So they had a lot of economic loss as a result of this TV special. So that is just one example of where a company could sue for disparagement. Our next intentional tort in this area is intentional interference with a contract. So this is where you know somebody has a contract and you somehow cause them to breach that contract. You cause them to violate the terms of what they are supposed to be doing under that contract. Where this usually comes up is in employment contracts. So somebody has an employment contract and another competitor comes in and they really want that employee, and they somehow cause them to breach that contract. And a lot of times in those situations, the competitor company that is hiring the employee away will pay the damages that are involved with that intentional interference because they want to have that employee so much. If you have an employee who has you have a prospective employee who has interviewed with you, and you are offering them a certain salary, and somebody else comes along and just offers them a better deal, that's not enough to be an intentional interference. It's got to be more than just they gave me a better deal. They have to actually cause you to breach a contract.